In the ancient town of Kojola, nestled between rolling hills and thick forests, the king's palace stood proudly, its walls painted in vibrant reds and browns, an architectural testament to the rich history of the kingdom. The village was known for its peace and unity, and under the wise reign of Oba Adidran, the people flourished. Trade routes brought in wealth, and the drums of celebration often echoed through the village. But on a certain night, the air was thick with a tension no one could have foreseen. The palace was unusually quiet, the cheerful sounds of the market had dimmed. In the dead of night, a cry pierced the silence, a desperate wail from the queen's chambers. The king, Oba Adidran, had been found dead. The news spread like wildfire. The people of Kojola were shaken to their core. Oba Adidran was not just their king, he was the heartbeat of the village. His death was sudden and without explanation. There were no signs of illness. His advisors had spoken to him just hours before, and he was his usual, vibrant self. The chiefs gathered in the king's hall the next morning, their faces grim, eyes heavy with worry. As they sat in a circle on woven mats, the eldest chief, Balegan Adewale, who was known for his wisdom and leadership, addressed the others. It was Olori Mareo, his youngest and most favored queen, who found his body lying cold in the king's bed. His eyes were open, his mouth frozen in a faint gasp, as though he had been taken by surprise. The palace erupted in chaos as the news spread like wildfire. The royal drummers were summoned to announce the king's passing, but behind the scenes, tension simmered.
He was healthy just yesterday. How can this be? This is so sad. Why?
Murmurs began to fill the room. The king's advisors, his wives, and his eldest son, Prince Femi, exchanged worried glances. No one knew what had happened, or at least no one was willing to say it aloud. There were whispers of foul play, a quiet suspicion that something darker lurked beneath the surface of the king's sudden demise.
We must get to the root of this. We will not rest until the killer and his accomplices are caught. They will face the wrath of the law of our land. Let us summon Tan, the detective, to unravel this conspiracy.
The kingmaker summoned Tond, a detective known for his sharp mind and tenacity, was called in to investigate. When he arrived at the palace, the air was thick with tension. The royal family and council members had gathered in the great hall, their faces a mix of grief and suspicion. The detective was escorted to the king's chambers where the body still lay. His sharp eyes scanned the room, noting the immaculate bedchamber, the perfectly arranged pillows, the untouched glass of water by the bedside. There were no obvious signs of a struggle. It was almost too peaceful. The detective searched everywhere, looking for foul play or incriminating evidence to nail the culprit, but nothing. He concluded.
There must be a conspiracy behind all this. I must interrogate every member of the king's family, including the guards and the chiefs. I'll need a full autopsy. The result might help me to know the cause of the king's death. Peter, are you there?
The detective said quietly to his assistant, Sergeant Peter, who nodded and made arrangements for the king's body to be taken to the town's clinic. While king's remain is being taken out of the palace, the detective stayed behind with his colleague, Peter, to interrogate the members of the king's family. As the investigation began, the detective turned his attention to those closest to the king. He started with Olori Mareo, the queen who had found the body. Tell me everything you remember from last night, he said gently, sensing her fragile state. She was still in shock, her hands trembling as she spoke.
The king retired early. He seemed tired but otherwise fine. I went to check on him this morning, as I always do, and that's when I found him like this. I don't understand what happened.
The detective watched her carefully. She seemed genuinely distressed, but he knew better than to take things at face value. Did the king have any enemies? Anyone who might want to harm him? Queen Mareo hesitated for a moment before speaking.
The council hasn't been pleased with his decisions lately. He's been talking about reforms, things that would change the way Kojola is run. There are many who didn't agree with him. Some in his cabinet did not like him.
The detective's interest piqued. Anyone specific?
Chief Oliowo, the head of the council, has been particularly vocal. He's old and set in his ways. He didn't like how much influence the king had been giving the common people.
Ton filed that information away for later, but he wasn't done yet. He moved on to interview the king's eldest son, Prince Femi, who would now be the immediate heir to the throne. The prince was composed, but there was a coldness in his eyes that unsettled the detective.
My father was a great king, but it's no secret that the palace has its politics. Power comes with enemies. It could be one of those chiefs in the council who did not agree with his policies that planned his death. I can assure you, detective, that I will not rest until I expose his killer.
Do you suspect anyone in particular in your father's council of chiefs? The detective asked, watching him closely. Prince Femi looked out the window, his jaw clenched.
Everyone has something to gain, Inspector. My father wasn't just a ruler, he was a gatekeeper to wealth and influence. His death benefits many. Do you want me to mention names of people who could benefit from his death? I just came back from abroad. I have not settled down, and this happened.
As the days passed, the results from the autopsy arrived. The cause of death was poison, a slow-acting toxin that had been slipped into the king's food or drink the night before. The poison was rare, something that would have required careful planning to acquire. Ton immediately ordered a deeper investigation into the palace kitchen. The royal cook, an elderly woman named Aya Agba, swore on her life that she had prepared the king's meals with the utmost care, as she always had. "I've been serving this family for decades," she cried. "I would never do such a thing." But someone had. The question was who? As Ton dug deeper, he uncovered an intricate web of palace intrigue. There were those within the royal family who stood to gain from King Adidran's death. Prince Femi, though stoic in his grief, was now in line to become the next ruler. The council, led by Chief Oliowo, would benefit from a more pliable king, someone they could control. And then there was Queen Mareo. Though she had been the king's favorite, rumors had begun circulating that the king was planning to take another wife, one who would come from a powerful family that could shift the balance of power within the palace. Mareo's position, and perhaps even her influence, had been at risk. As Ton put together the puzzle, more questions arose than answers. Who had access to the king's chambers that night? Who could have slipped the poison into his drink? And why? One night, as the detective Ton reviewed his notes, a servant slipped him a letter under his door. The note was unsigned, but it contained a single sentence that sent chills down his spine. "Look to the shadows, Inspector. The truth lies in the dark corners of the palace." Realizing the depth of the conspiracy, Ton knew he was close to uncovering something far bigger than a simple murder. The palace was full of secrets, and it was clear that someone would go to great lengths to keep them hidden. But who?
To watch the next part of this story, kindly click the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell so as to be notified when the next video is uploaded. Please, like, comment, and share. Thanks for watching.